Every year, crimes are committed that the police fail to solve. Investigations have been going on for decades, but detectives and relatives of the victims do not lose hope of finding the truth. On the morning of June 6, 12-year-old Sherry Marlar drove with her stepfather Raymond to the bank. While he was signing some paperwork, Sherry became thirsty and asked her stepfather for $1 for a soda. That could be bought from a machine at a gas station across the street from the bank. They agreed to meet near the car. This was after the time Raymond saw Sherry. She never made it to the gas station. The search for Sherry quickly went beyond the city of Greenville, and then the state of Alabama. Over the years of investigation, various versions have been worked out. Raymond, Sherry's stepfather, was the first suspect. Several interrogations were conducted, but he refused the lie detector, citing the fact that he considered himself guilty, because he did not keep track of his stepdaughter and most likely would fail the test. As a result, suspicions were removed from him. Over the next few months, police were contacted by 3 people who claimed to have seen a girl who looked like Sherry in Conley, Georgia. She was with a man, about 50 years old. He is a truck driver. The girl looked disheveled and upset. She called the man BJ. Unfortunately, the police were unable to identify the man. In 2019, Ryan Anderson, who created a Facebook page in support of Sherry, published a post in which she stated that Sherry was killed, dismembered and abandoned on a pig farm in Butler County shortly after her disappearance. According to Ryan, one of the alleged killers showed her photographs of the same farm, and on one of them she saw what looked like a head. The woman said that law enforcement seized the photographs and handed them over to the FBI, but the FBI denied this information. Mark Colhurst was a fairly successful businessman. He made good money by catching and selling fish and crabs. He and his crew went out into the ocean on a 58-foot Zyna, gave the name Investor. On September 7th, fishermen from 75 ships went out to the ocean to fish. In the distance, they saw the Investor, which was drifting on the waves and black smoke was coming from it. The fishermen of the casino ship rushed to the rescue. With great efforts they managed to put out the fire, but what they saw on the deck and in the cabin shocked them. Mark Colhurst, his pregnant wife, 2 children aged 4 and 5, and a crew of 4 guys aged 18 to 19 were all dead. The examination showed that people died not from a fire, but from gunshot wounds. Whoever committed the massacre set fire to the ship to cover his tracks. The fishermen of the casino ship said that when they headed for the Investor, a man quickly sailed away from him on a boat. They thought it was a crew member who managed to escape. Unfortunately, it was not possible to make out the appearance of the man. Due to the fact that the Investor practically burned down, no evidence could be found. The remains of the youngest child, 4-year-old John, were not found. Most likely it burned out completely. 2 years after this terrible incident, the police detained John Kenneth Peel. A year earlier, he was a member of the Investor's crew. But Mark kicked him out with a scandal when he found out that the guy was using illegal substances. There was no direct evidence against John. He was charged twice and dropped twice. In 1986, after a second acquittal, John filed a lawsuit for police harassment. He won the case and received $900,000 in damages. After a thorough investigation and extensive searches, the case had to be closed. Some detectives believe that it was John who committed the massacre, but they cannot prove it. On March 12, 16-year-old Pauline Robin Burgett was found dead in her bedroom. The girl's mother and 11-year-old brother Chad were out of town that weekend. Pauline refused to go with them. She had other plans. She wanted to spend 2 days with an overnight stay with a friend. But on the evening of the first day, the girl left her friend to meet a guy. She did not have a permanent boyfriend. So no one knows who she saw that evening. During the investigation, it turned out that Pauline's body had multiple beatings, stab wounds and signs of suffocation. She also had sexual contact with 2 men, as 2 samples of biomaterials were found. Experts said that it was not rape, but voluntary contact. Under suspicion was almost the entire male environment of Pauline. Despite her young age, she had many boyfriends. In addition, she communicated not only with her peers, but also with adult men. When a DNA test was possible, the police checked all the suspects, but no matches were found with the biomaterials found. Pauline's case is still open. Chad never loses hope of finding out who killed his sister. Pauline's mother passed away 3 years after she lost a daughter. On June 9, 6-year-old Morgan Nick went with her mother Colleen to a baseball game. The girl played in the Little League. The game ended at 10 p.m., but the girl wanted to spend some more time with her friends. They were catching fireflies in the parking lot. At this time, Colleen communicated with the parents of other team members and constantly looked in the direction where the children were running. When the children, having played enough, ran up to their parents, Morgan was not with them. The children said they last saw her when she was standing near her mother's car and shaking sand out of her shoes. At that moment, a creepy man got out of the red pickup truck, approached the girl and spoke to her. Hearing this, Colleen ran to the parking lot, but there was no one there. The long search for Morgan began. Thanks to witnesses, the police compiled a sketch of the kidnapper, and they also learned that he was driving a red Ford pickup truck. The FBI worked out different versions. They checked all the incoming information, but they failed to get on the trail of the criminal who kidnapped the 6-year-old Morgan. One of the suspects, who most closely matched the kidnapper's description, was Billy Jack Lynx, previously convicted of kidnapping an 11-year-old boy. But when the police came to him, it turned out that he had long died in prison. In 2017, Morgan's case was closed, but her parents do not lose hope of finding out at least some information about their daughter. Married couple Mary Edna and Dominic Badaracco were in a very difficult relationship. Mary was tired of enduring her husband's infidelity and beatings, so she decided to divorce him, but she didn't have time to file an application. The woman went missing on August 20th. According to Dominic, he returned home from work in the evening. The wife's car was parked in the driveway and a bunch of keys and an engagement ring lay on the kitchen table, but the woman herself was not at home. Some of Mary's belongings and jewelry were also missing. Dominic's absence didn't bother him at all. He was not going to contact the police and even forbade his stepdaughters to do so. He said that he and Mary decided to break up the night before. He gave her $100,000 to move out of the house. Mary's daughters knew that their mother wanted to leave Dominic, so they decided to wait until she contacted them, but after 11 days they contacted the police. An investigation has begun. The police learned many interesting details of the family life of the Badaracco spouses, so they soon reclassified the case as a deliberate murder, and Dominic became the main suspect. His behavior raised a lot of questions, but there was no evidence against him. After 38 years, Mary Edna's case is still open. Detectives do not lose hope of finding out what happened on August 20, 1984. Jane Pritchard, 28, wanted to get her master's degree from the University of Maryland, and was hard at work on her thesis in biology. The girl studied the behavior of plants, so she often visited Blackbird Forest alone. Unfortunately, Jane was unable to finish her work. In the fall of 1986, her half-dressed body was found in the woods with gunshot wounds to her shoulder and neck. Jane was last seen on 20th of September. Early in the morning, she went to the forest in her car. I took with me all the necessary equipment and a journal for records, in which I made notes every few minutes. Jane parked her car on the side of the road and walked about 30 meters deep into the woods. There she settled down under an oak tree and began to write down her observations in a journal with the exact time. The last entry was made at 10 a.m. Jane's body was found in the same place where she had camped. She was discovered by a young couple who came to the campsite. They were the ones who called the police. During the investigation, a man called the police. He said that on the morning of September 20th he hunted for squirrels in Blackbird Forest. From afar he saw a girl who was sitting under a tree and wrote something in a magazine, and later met another hunter. He even described his appearance for drawing up an identikit. But the more details the man told, the more he aroused suspicion. But there was no evidence against him. A year later, Jane's case was frozen, and returned to him in 2014, when a special group was created to investigate cold cases of the 70s. All items found at the crime scene were reanalyzed. Unfortunately, so far this has not yielded positive results, but detectives continue to work. On October 22, sisters Norma and Judith Sims went to a football match. Norma returned home first, at about 11 p.m., and saw a terrible picture. In her parents' bedroom, her mother, father, and younger sister were lying on the floor in a large pool of blood, with their underwear down. They had gunshot and stab wounds. Helen and Robert, Norma's parents, despite being shot in the head, showed signs of life, but were unconscious. Doctors fought desperately for their lives, but they could not be saved. Grabbing the phone, Norma's first call was not to the rescue service, but to the funeral home. Funeral home owner Russer Beavis soon arrived at the Sims home with his 16-year-old son, Rocky. They untied the victims, trying to save them, after which they called the rescue service. During a search of the Sims home, no extraneous traces or DNA were found. The door was not broken, and all things were in place. There were coffee cups and a full ashtray on the kitchen table. It all looked as if someone familiar had come to the Sims. During the investigation, the detectives had about 10 suspects. But after interrogations it turned out that they were not involved in the murder of the Sims family. Detectives who re-investigated the case found many flaws. Starting with the fact that the girl called the funeral home instead of dialing 911. Russell and Rocky Bevy could have destroyed important evidence at the crime scene while trying to save the family. And ending with the fact that the police did not conduct a survey properly, including not taking scrapings from under the nails of the victims and not subjecting the body of 12-year-old Joy to a gynecological examination. 19-year-old Lisa O worked as a hairdresser at Susan Beer's salon. On January 20th, after the end of the working day, the girl went to meet her boyfriend Doug Holmes. They planned to spend time at his sister's apartment. Late in the evening, the couple said goodbye, and each went to his home. But Lisa never made it. In the morning, her parents called Doug and said that their daughter hadn't been home overnight. They hoped she stayed with him for the night. But the guy said that Lisa went home in the evening. Doug went looking for the girl. He took the route Lisa usually took and to his surprise found her car parked on the side of the highway, halfway to the house. The glass on the driver's door was slightly lowered. That evening it was raining heavily, so water got into the interior of the car. The driver's seat was completely wet, and there was about 5 centimeters of water on the floor. It seemed strange that Lisa's completely dry handbag lay on the seat. It seemed that it was put there after the rain stopped. The naked body of the girl was found on January 31st at a fairly large distance from the place where the car was found. Despite the fact that only 10 days had passed, the body was badly decomposed, so it was impossible to determine the cause of death and the approximate time. There were several versions of what happened that day, but it was not possible to confirm at least one of them. Many years later, when the coroner changed and the police, the case began to be re-examined. New evidence has emerged, and a number of errors that were made in the original investigation have also been revealed. The Dove alibi family lived in the suburbs of Chicago, in the small town of Midlothian. It has always been quiet and safe until a terrible accident happened in 1988. On September 10, 7-year-old Jacqueline Dove alibi was abducted from her bed at night. Her body was found 5 days later, 3 miles from home, in a clearing of tall grass behind the parking lot. The girl was wrapped in a blanket with which she was kidnapped, and a rope was tied around her neck. On the night of Jacqueline's abduction, the residents of the Dove alibi house did not hear anything. Although in the morning they found a broken window in the basement, through which, in all likelihood, the criminal entered the house. But it was suspicious that the kidnapper managed to quietly carry the girl from her bedroom to the exit past the parents' room. In addition, during the investigation it became known that the basement window was broken from the inside. That is why suspicions fell on Cynthia and David, Jacqueline's mother and stepfather. But after lengthy legal proceedings, the charges against them were dropped. Another suspect was Jimmy Hess, the girl's father. He previously fought for custody of his daughter, but was unsuccessful. He also had unpleasant incidents with Cynthia. Checking this version, the detectives found out that Jimmy was serving a prison sentence at the time of the abduction. There were other suspects, but for some reason the police did not thoroughly check them. Detectives were sure that her parents were to blame for the death of the girl. Jacqueline's case is still open. After all charges against her parents were dropped, they moved and changed their last name. This story is very similar to the previous one, only it happened 18 years earlier. 12-year-old Kelly Albright lived with her mother, stepfather and younger brother in the small town of Yoder, Reno County. On September 17, the girl was kidnapped from home at night. And 4 days later her naked body was found by a local farmer in his field. She was subjected to physical and sexual abuse. Experts identified 18 stab wounds. The police had several suspects. But no one was ever arrested or charged during the investigation. According to detectives, the most likely killer was a family friend as Glenn Davis, but the evidence against him was circumstantial. On the eve of the abduction, his car was seen near the Albright family home, and the next day, the man's neighbors saw him carefully cleaning the interior and trunk of the car. Unfortunately, the police found Glenn Davis too late, after 27 years. They found out that the man was serving a prison term for a sexual offense he committed 2 years earlier. But they couldn't interrogate him. Glenn died the day before the scheduled meeting with the detectives. Write in the comments which of the stories interested you the most. I will make a separate video about it.